Hi, today I'm going to do a book review of the book called The Reign of Edward VI. This book is written by James Anthony Froude. This book is a everyman library. About it many years ago. It sat on my shelf for decades, and I'm finally cracking down on myself, and I am reading some of these books that have been on my shelves for years that I never read. This is an old school everyman's library. James Anthony Froude was an author and historian during the Victorian age. He lived from 1818 to 1894. So Froude he wrote a history of England in many volumes, and this is one of the volumes called The Reign of Edward VI. Historically, the time he's covering is right before the Elizabethan era. And Henry VIII, as everybody knows, had 6 wives, and the wife who bore him a male heir was named Jane Seymour, and the male heir was named Edward. So when Henry VIII died, Edward became king, but he was only 9 years old. So the way it worked in England was that Henry VIII, in his will, he set down what he wanted to happen after he died. And there was a privy council that ran the country. They were in charge of Edward VI until he became of age and he could take on all the responsibilities of the king. So Edward VI was king, but he didn't control the state. The state of England was run by the Protector, and Jane Seymour's brother was named Edward Seymour, and the Privy Council directed Edward Seymour to become the Protector. So he was the protector of England, and he was the protector of Edward VI. One of the great discoveries that I feel that I made when I was reading this book is that there's a similarity between Edward VI's life and a character in a Shakespeare play. So back to the protector, Edward Seymour. From now on, I'll call him the Protector because his name's Edward and Edward VI is named Edward. So we're going to call the Protector in order to prevent any confusion between the two people. So the Protector was, once he took over power from King Henry VIII, there was a war that occurred in Scotland. And he was successful in this war, and so his protectorate began on a positive note. But of course, Henry VIII was a very tumultuous time with his personal life and also with many of the affairs of the state of his time. This volatility continued into the protectorate. But I want to move on to the discovery I made about it's specifically about the Protector's brother was named Thomas Seymour. And I think there's a direct connection between Thomas Seymour and King Claudius in Hamlet. One of the first things is Thomas Seymour was envious of his brother, who was the Protector, had all that power, and he was constantly undermining his brother. One of the things that Thomas Seymour did was he would bribe members of Edward VI's household, and so that he could gain access to Edward VI, and he could talk to Edward VI directly and undermine his own brother. But that was just one thing that he did. The Protector recognized his jealous brother, and he tried to mitigate these maneuvers by his brother, and he made his brother, Thomas Seymour, the Lord Admiral of the Navy. Now, when Henry VIII died, As I said, Jane Seymour was the wife who bore him Edward VI, but she died soon after Edward VI was born. Now, Henry VIII's last wife was named Catherine Parr, and Catherine Parr took on the role of kind of being the mother for many of the children who were of many of Henry VIII's children. So Catherine Parr took on a motherly role to Edward VI. So Edward VI saw Catherine Parr as his replacement mother. So Thomas Seymour wanted to rival his brother, and one of the things he thought of doing was marrying Catherine Parr. So he bribed members of Catherine Parr's household so that they would talk favorably of him to Catherine Parr. And this was successful. He was able to romance Catherine Parr, and she was receptive to his advances. And as their romance progressed, she agreed to marry Thomas Seymour, but she said that she wanted to wait a year after King Henry VIII's death until she would marry Thomas Seymour. Thomas Seymour pressed her, and she agreed that she would marry Thomas Seymour 2 months after the death of Henry VIII. And actually within 3 months of Henry VIII's death, Catherine Parr was privately married to Thomas Seymour. So when I heard this 2 months, and I immediately thought of Hamlet and how he was so crazy agitated because his father, the king, had died, and his mother, the queen, had remarried within 2 months of his father's death. And that's what sparked all Hamlet's madness and craziness and all the wonderful tragedy of Hamlet. And here we have, if you take the persona of Edward VI, his father, the king, died, and his mother, Catherine Parr, remarried within 2 months after the king's death. And so you have Edward seeing his father die, his uncle marrying the queen. I think that's similar. I think that's close enough to Hamlet to call that a connection. So certainly Shakespeare was born in 1564. These events occurred right before he was born. We know Shakespeare studied English history very, very closely. You know, most people know the history of their own times and the times right before them very, very well. So I think I can safely assume that Shakespeare was very familiar with this whole story. One of my first thoughts was that Catherine Parr was kind of tricked into marriage, but she was fully complicit with this marriage. Froude, in a footnote, prints a letter that Catherine Parr wrote to Thomas Seymour before she was publicly married to him. And in this letter she says, "When it shall be your pleasure to repair hither, ye must take some pains to come early in the morning, that ye may be gone again by 7 o'clock, and so I suppose that you may come without suspect. I pray you let me have knowledge overnight of what hour ye will come, that your porteress may wait at the gate to the field for you. Signed, by her that is just and shall be your humble, true, and loving wife. Signed by Catherine Parr." So after they were privately married, they wanted to become publicly married. And Catherine Parr, in those times, Thomas Seymour was obliged to ask the Protector for permission to marry Catherine Parr, the Queen. And so Catherine Parr told Thomas Seymour that he should not directly ask the Protector for permission, that he should go through the other members of the Privy Council to get permission to marry her. While they were planning their marriage, the Protector found out that they were living together, and he was very upset. So Thomas Seymour continued to undermine his brother, And when he was close to Edward VI, he told the king that the Scottish war had been madly undertaken and was money wasted in vain. When the Protector returned from Scotland, Froude is very specific, and he says that Thomas Seymour whispered into Edward VI's ear, quote, that he was too bashful in his own affairs. Why did he not speak to bear rule as other kings did? End quote. So this direct reference to spreading like evil thoughts in through the ear is similar also to Hamlet, where the king is killed through poison through the ear. Then Thomas Seymour tried to spread a rumor that King Henry VIII never wanted a protector. You know, Thomas Seymour was in Parliament, and he wrote a letter stating that they shouldn't have a protector, and even if they had a protector, it should be two jobs. It should be one job running the realm and one job administering to Edward VI. So he wrote this letter, and he asked Edward VI to sign it. Edward VI was very shrewd when presented with this letter, and he said, quote, if the thing was right, the Lords would allow it. If it was ill, he would not sign it, end quote. Thomas was hysterical about this denial, and on the way to Parliament at Winchester, he was with Dorset and Clinton, and Thomas said to them, if I be thus used by God's precious soul, I will make this the blackest Parliament that ever was in England. He swore he could live with it better without the Protector than the Protector with him. He also said, quote, he would take his fist to the ear, unquote, of the proudest man that should stop him. Another reference to the ear. That is similar to Hamlet. So at this point, it starts to become clear that this Thomas Seymour is like a psychopath. You know, what we call a psychopath. You know, he's on par with Shakespeare's worst villains. Thomas Seymour was Lord of the Admiralty. There were many difficulties with pirates on the coasts of England, and the authorities actually captured some of the pirate ships, and it was their responsibility to return the cargo to the rightful owners. Well, the Lord Admiralty and his officers failed to do this very basic thing, and Froude tells us that many of the ornaments stolen by the pirates were seen on the persons of the admiral's followers. And the admiral also purchased the Scilly Islands. The Scilly Island, these islands were known as a safe harbor for pirates. And then Catherine Parr became pregnant by Thomas Seymour, and soon after the birth of the child, she became ill. And the rumor was that Thomas, quote, helped her to her end quote. After the death of Catherine Parr, Thomas Seymour, he set his sights on Elizabeth. He also paid for a private army that was sequestered and ready to fight the Protector. So this guy was a serious threat to his brother. So calmer minds began to see what a serious threat he was, and they wanted him arrested. And this is what Thomas Seymour said, quote, by God's precious soul, whosoever lays hands on me to fetch me to prison, I shall thrust my dagger in him, end quote. Thomas Seymour broke into King Edward's apartment with the goal of taking possession of him. I think that means kidnapping him. So Thomas Seymour was finally arrested and put into the Tower, and when they started investigating him, they found that he had put into circulation 40,000 pounds worth of debased silver coin. Parliament wrote up 33 charges against him, including high treason. He was judged to be executed, And he showed no remorse the whole time. And when he was in prison, he wrote letters. He wrote letters to Elizabeth and Mary, urging them to overthrow the Protector. And he hid the letters in his shoe. And when he had been taken to the chopping block, his last words were to his servant, who he told to deliver the letters. So he was beheaded, as he should have been. And Latimer said, quote, "He was a wicked man, and the realm is well rid of him," end quote. So truly a Shakespearean figure. So this was the best part of Froude's history, this very specific story. There's a lot of other material in this book, and it really moves along fast. There's stuff about there's a lot of stuff about the economy and the debasement of the currency. There's some stuff about the foreign affairs, the Scottish Wars I mentioned. And then there's issues with Spain and France, the Low Countries, the Pope. There's a section about religion where the Protector introduced the Book of Common Prayer and changed the British, he outlawed the Mass at one point. And there was a lot of rebellion about this, and there were revolts and rebellions, and it was a very tumultuous time. Finally, the Protector falls, but you'll have to read the book to find out how that happens. So, thanks for watching.